Starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to TechGig webinar series, our endeavor to empower techies. The topic of today's session is non-functional requirements. Do we really care? Our guest speaker today is Deepak Dua. He's a QA manager at OSSQ. Deepak is having more than 10 years of experience in software testing field. He has worked on various domains like e-commerce, healthcare, CMS, CRM, etc. He has expertise in web and mobile solutions. Deepak has extensively worked on testing, automation, and non-functional testing. He is currently associated with OSSQ in the capacity of a QA manager. Apart from managing project testing related work, he also runs Testing Center of Excellence and continuously working on skill development. We expect this webinar to last for about an hour with 45 minutes of presentation and the remainder time for question and answer round. So if you have any questions, please submit them using questions tab on your control panel. So without further delay, I introduce you all to our guest speaker. Over to you, Deepak.
Thanks, Deepika, and thank you everyone for taking out your valuable time for today's webinar. Today we are going to discuss about non-functional requirement. Do we really care? We will discuss about the importance of non-functional requirements. So before I go into details, I would like to share a small introduction about OSSQ. OSSQ is global solution provider. We deliver integrated mission critical solution using open source. OSSQ has helped organizations around the world ranging from Fortune 100 corporations to high-tech startups to increase revenue and customer satisfaction while reducing cost and time to market. So in Corbus, we work in different practice areas. So these are few major practice areas in which we work on. PHP, CRM, marketing automation, content management system, product information management, enterprise, mobile and web applications, e-commerce, e-payment and workflow, enterprise architecture consulting, BI and data integration, big data, database, cloud-based large computing capacity. OSSQ has a broad set of competencies, but our greatest strength and what separates us from other open source solution providers is the ability to integrate many applications into a solution that can help you to meet your business objectives and differentiate yourself from your competition. So friends, this was a small introduction about OSSQ. So let's get back to today's topic about non-functional requirements. So before starting with the different slides, I want to give a small background and the purpose of this webinar. Most of you have already experienced this thing also, like when you start your project execution and you come across different phases, and you at the same moment you come across with different non-functional requirements. During the project execution, most of the time we emphasize majorly on functional requirement. There are various reasons behind that, because sometimes we face the challenges related to resources due to some estimation, budgeting, and any other external constraints. So in this session, we will try to uncover how this challenge can be minimized, how you can overcome all those problem areas, and how you can plan your non-functional requirement into your actual plan, and you can really implement them into your project execution. Moving to the next slide, this is today's agenda. Today we are going to understand what are the NFRs. NFR stands for non-functional requirement, and we'll also understand how it is different from functional requirements. Why NFRs are really important, why we are emphasizing on implementing these NFR during your project life cycle, how NFR can be identified out of the system requirement, how one can measure the NFR and their effectiveness, whether they are implemented correctly in the system or not, and how you can at what point of time you can say that we have successfully implemented the NFR. How you can arrange your NFR in terms of traceability, or you can map your non-functional requirement with your functional requirements. How you can address right set of questions with your stakeholders. What kind of input you can get from them during the different requirement elicitation process, and how you can verify your NFR, and when you can say that you're ready for the UAT release. So let's move to the next slide, where we will discuss some industry definition. We have collected some of the definition from the industry expert, and let's try to understand what expert says about the non-functional requirements. So according to IEEE, in software system engineering, a software requirement that describes not what the software will do, but how the software will do. For example, software performance requirements, software external interface requirements, software design constraints, and software quality attributes. Non-functional requirements are difficult to test, therefore they are usually evaluated subjectively. Another expert says non-functional requirements are constraints on the service of functions offered by the system. They include timing constraints, constraints on the development process and standards. Non-functional requirements often apply to the system as a whole. They do not usually just apply to individual system feature or services. Another expert says a property or quality that product must have, such as appearance or a speed, security, or accuracy property. And at last, the next one is users have implicit expectation about how well the software will work. These characteristics include how easy the software is to use, how quickly it executes, how reliable it is, and how well it behaves when expected conditions arise. The non-functional requirement defines these aspects about the system. So if you have an overall look on this definition, the one thing will come out that all the experts say that these are the constraints. You have to meet the constraint to achieve a successful product at the end, so that you can make your customer happy. So this is very subjective thing. You cannot say it depends on person to person. For me, something is okay, but for another person, there may be a problem in that particular thing. So this is very subjective. Another thing which is coming out of this definition is that this is a parallel process to the project execution cycle in terms of non-functional requirement implementation. So when you are implementing your functional requirement, at the same moment you try to implement these non-functional requirement along with the functional requirement specification implementation. So the next thing which is uncovered from this definition is they are not easy to implement. So most of the time people take it very lightly that non-functional requirement is can be implemented in the later stage, and they can be implemented separately, so which is not the fact. The fact is, if you are working on non-functional requirement, you have to take them along with the functional requirement implementation, because they are not an individual activity. So now at this point we can say that now we have understood something about non-functional requirement. So let's move to the next slide. So this slide tell us something about like what are the basic difference in functional and non-functional requirements. So we have collected some information here, like we can compare the attributes of functional requirement and non-functional requirement here. So if we talk about functional requirement, these are product features, and if we talk about non-functional requirement, these are product properties. So let me give you an example here. So if you're achieving a task for any particular application, let's say you're performing in shopping, you're working in a shopping site and you're buying a product. So there are some steps associated with that process, and in that process you perform certain steps and ultimately achieve a goal. So these are features, but along with these steps, you feel something like you really feel the performance, you really feel the usability. So these are the property of that particular product. So sometimes it happens where all the features are working correctly, but there are slightly challenges in the experience. So that kind of property comes under non-functional requirements. Another thing is non-functional requirement describes the action which the user work is concerned. As I gave you the example earlier that if you're performing a certain task, you have to perform some action. At the same moment, when you experience that action, that will become a non-functional requirement. A non-functional function requirement can be captured in a use case format. You can document that thing in a form of user stories. However, in non-functional requirement, they are global constraints on a software system, and you can not depict them as a user story, but they are a quality parameter or quality attribute to your software. And non-functional requirement also associated with some operational costs. So sometimes when you implement such kind of non-functional requirement, that lead to a very heavy cost to the project. So that could be a reason where people lose interest, or they're not ready to implement that non-functional requirement. The another fact or another difference is a behavior that can be analyzed by drawing sequence diagrams, state charts, etc. So you can give some pictorial view to your functional requirement. On the other hand, non-functional requirements are software quality, so this cannot be described as a picture or in any other form or any other thing. And the last difference is non-functional requirement can be traced to individual set of programs. You can write a different functions or different set of programs for your different different functional requirements, but usually non-functional requirements cannot be coded or cannot be programmed in a single module. So if you are applying your non-functional requirement, then that will be implemented on your whole project. So moving to the next slide. So in this slide, we will discuss about the importance of non-functional requirements, why they are really important. So I'm taking another example. I'm again taking example of e-commerce website where you can perform a shopping. So suppose you are going to buy a product, or you are searching for a particular product of your choice, and you are going to a site, and in the search bar you have typed the keyword to find out a particular product, and as soon as you click on the search button, the result will display on the screen. Suppose if you have clicked on the search button, nothing happens on the screen for a long time, suppose for a 30 to 60 seconds or maybe more than that, you will get annoyed, like what is happening to the system, and maybe you will lose the interest there, because maybe the system is giving you the result correctly, but not at the same moment or at the same time when you want the information. So there is slight delay in the performance or in the response time. So maybe your functionality is working fine, but if your other aspects, other non-functional requirements are not handled well, the whole system may fail, and that may lead to loss of business, loss of user interest, and loss of credibility. So here you can see how important the non-functional requirements are, and we can take as many examples to show you that how they are really important, but this example is sufficient to give you the idea about what we are trying to say here. So we are moving to next slide. So sometimes we feel that it is very challenging to cover all the non-functional requirements, and there are various reasons behind the non-functional requirements are not captured well, and we have tried to uncover some of them. But the very first thing is most of the time non-functional requirements are implicit. What happens is your customer is giving you a particular functionality that it should work in that manner, and the project team implement the same features in that manner as well. But users have the idea in their mind that when you are developing that particular feature, this feature or this function will behave like this. But at the same moment, development team do not take care of those facts which are related or which are implicit requirement, and that time this thing can be ignored or may ignored and lead to a problem area. Another thing is there is no formal agreement. Most of the time, some of the non-functional requirements are not documented anywhere that these are my deliverables to the client. Let's say example of maintainability. Very few agreement says about that project should be maintainable and it should support the further enhancement, because it's kind of a mutual thing, like both parties knows, but this create very ambiguity in the statement, like customer know that they will get this kind of product, but we are not going to deliver that kind of product. So there is no formal agreement between the two parties, and that leads to a problem. Lack of awareness. Sometimes it happens or user doesn't know about some particular non-functional requirements, and that becomes another challenge. The next challenge is incomplete elicitation. Elicitation is requirement gathering process. So if you are not capturing your requirement well, and that will again lead to, or that will become a challenge for you. Different terminologies across the industries. Sometimes it happens different stakeholders use different terminologies, and that lead to a confusion, and due to some understanding problem, the non-functional requirements get neglected. Most of the non-function, most of them are contradictory. What we are trying to say here is sometimes few non-functional requirements are bit confusing or ambiguous. So I'm taking an example here. Suppose we are applying a password policy for a particular website. Like password policy contains some kind of project. My password should have this much of character, this much of length, and this much of special character, this much of numerical character. And this type of password policy comes under the security testing, but sometimes it produced as a user story or a functional requirement. So this kind of ambiguity needs to be removed to minimize the challenge related to non-functional requirements. Another thing is related with the non-functional requirement is it's difficult to enforce during development, because sometimes you face challenge related to your schedule, your tight timelines, your resource crunch, and people most of the time overlook all these non-functional requirement, and one cannot enforce the development team to implement all these non-functional requirements at the same time or parallel to the functional requirement implementation. We have also seen sometimes it is difficult to set up acceptance criteria for non-functional requirements because due to lack of awareness or less knowledge, people may not come to a, or may not finalize the acceptance criteria, which leads to another problem. So we are moving to the next slide. So these are the few type of NFRs. We have categorized them in two aspects. One from the perspective of users and one from the perspective of developers. The user perspective are the list where if these type of non-functional requirements are not implemented well, then who is going to be impacted? So in this case, end user will be impacted. So suppose the performance of my website is not up to the mark, there is a bit delay in the performance, or if you are accessing any site and you are coming up with a lot of delay, so that end user will lose interest. Another thing is security. I feel my website is not secure enough. I will not perform any financial transaction on that particular site. The usability is another area where user can be impacted if my site is not very much intuitive, and you have no clue where you need to go. So that is another problem. Compatibility, accessibility, reliability, flexibility, and interoperability. All these non-functional requirements are impacts the end user. And there are few more non-functional requirements due to which a developer or development team can be impacted, which are maintainability, portability, reusability, traceability. So if my website or my system which I have developed is not maintainable, so it will be very difficult for us to cater the further enhancement or small changes in the later phases. Or maybe if there is a critical need of implementing those kind of changes, maybe I have to change my entire framework or entire approach or entire architecture. So this thing needs to be covered in terms of developer point of view. So before we go further, let's understand something about requirement elicitation. So requirement elicitation is part of requirement engineering process, usually followed by analysis and specification of the requirement. And when you discover, when you document, and when you analyze your requirement, that process called requirement engineering. And in requirement engineering, you try to find out what are my functional requirements and what are my non-functional requirements. And capturing those requirements, that process is called requirement elicitation. And there are various methods available for requirement elicitation. And we have tried to capture a few of them. Interview is one of the requirement elicitation methods where the business analyst talk to the end user one-to-one and try to collect the facts. Sometimes they create a questionnaire and they can communicate offline. They just mail or message some questionnaire to end user, and based on the answer you can create your functional and non-functional scenarios. User observation, in user observation, business analysts sit with the end users and they observe their behavior, their different aspects, how they behave in different situations. So this kind of observation also used for the requirement gathering. Sometimes user conduct workshop. You can do a brainstorming session to gather the requirement. And once you are done with this method, you can document your requirement in use case format, and you can also create prototype to get the correct feedback from the customer, like how your system will look like after implementation. So these are few requirement elicitation techniques. So most of the time we use this requirement elicitation for capturing the non-functional requirement, and the idea is we can use this technique for capturing non-functional requirements as well. So if we add some questionnaire or we behave user, we observe user behavior from the perspective of non-functional requirements, so we can add those non-functional requirements during requirement elicitation process as well. So once the requirements are captured well, one can identify the non-functional requirements out of your functional requirements. So in case you are ready with your list of functional requirements, then you can further analyze your requirements just to fetch out the non-functional requirement out of them. The non-functional requirement can be identified by breaking the requirements in tasks and subtasks. So this model can be used to identify different non-functional requirements at task level. So we have function is the main requirement. Requirement, the requirement 1 and 2 are the sub requirement, and we have further decomposed each requirement in tasks, and each task have different set of requirements. And it might be possible that if my task 1 has my task 1 caters to non-functional requirement, a task 2 may have more than that non-functional requirement. So let's understand this using an example of an e-commerce website. So here we are dealing with the end consumer. We have 2 requirements: add product to cart and checkout. We further decompose add product to cart in 2 tasks. User can add product without logging into the website, and after logging into the website, they can add product into the cart. So if we talk about without logging, so what kind of NFR user will be encountered with? So if I'm adding a product into the cart, the usability is one of the major things which website developer needs to consider, like if the steps are intuitive and users do not lose their interest while adding the product into the cart, or the number of steps is very less. Because if you're talking about usability, if you have to perform 3 steps, more than 3 steps to achieve a task, that in that case user may lose interest in performing that task. So how well I have made a design very intuitive so that user can add product into the cart. Another thing is related with performance. So as soon as we add some product, what is the response time of the product to be appear in the cart. So these 2 NFR we have identified for task 1, which is without login. Let's take a look at the another task with login. So here we are passing on some password thing. So here a security is concerned. So apart from usability and performance, we add one more non-functional requirement for this particular task, because an authorized person can only log in into your website. So security is another NFR which is added here. The next requirement is checkout. For checkout, we have identified a task checkout using a credit card. So when you're using a credit card, you're performing a financial transaction on the website. So here we have identified few NFRs: security, PCI compliance, PCI stands for payment card industry. So there are some regulatory compliance which you need to implement if you are dealing with credit card or debit card transactions. The next one is performance, and next one is usability. So by this decomposition method, you can identify your different non-functional requirements from the task or from the requirement you have received from your end user. And to implement these NFR, you can decompose it further to get more output from a particular NFR. So let's have a look on the next slide how we can do that. So we have taken an example of adding product to the cart using login. So here we have identified one of the NFR, which is security. So now we are trying to decompose security, non-functional requirement, into further goals. So once you have identified the NFR, then you have to further break or decompose that particular non-functional requirement into multiple goals. So once you are established the goal, you will be end up with list of tasks or list of non-functional requirements, what kind of parameter you need to implement to achieve my goal. So we perform this activity, we continue this activity until we cannot decompose further. So here we have decomposed security in different goals, like SSL implementation of password policy, role-based authorization, PCI compliance, integrity of account, and data confidentiality. So these are the different areas where we need to work under the non-functional department, which is security. So I hope this decomposition is clear to everyone, like how we can further break our requirement into multiple non-functional requirements, so that we can easily create a line item for us, like what kind of implementation we can perform to achieve a security non-functional requirement. So next thing is measurement of NFR. So again, this is very subjective in nature, because till now there are very less information or less literature is available about measurement of non-functional requirement. So there is no absolute scale of all type of NFR. Yes, there are certain non-functional requirements which can be measurable, which are measurable easily, but not for all. And sometimes it is hard to measure quality of software in isolation until it is not into the correct environment. And we have also observed that software may behave differently in different environments. So I can explain this by giving an example of performance. So if my system is performing well in a particular environment, and if I change environment, my system may behave differently. So you cannot set a particular parameter, but you can further solve this problem by analyzing some good quality predictor for each type of NFR during your design analysis based on what is the purpose of NFR, what quality factor will impact the stakeholder, and how these factors will be met. So if we consider these three factors, we can come out with some indicator where you can measure your non-functional environment at different parameters. So this can be one of the approach of identifying or identifying the measurement unit for your different non-functional requirement. So based on the design analysis, we can identify the measurable unit for each NFR separately. So here is a list of multiple NFR. For each NFR, you have to identify quality factors. Then you have to identify or define measurable criteria, and then you can define the acceptance criteria, at what condition user will accept the non-functional requirements. So this approach is now explained using example. So let's take an example of performance. Performance is one of the non-functional requirement, and the quality factor for this particular non-functional requirement could be response time during peak load, response time during normal load, and for this quality factor, you can create some measurable criteria like concurrent users during peak load equal to 1,000, concurrent users during normal hours equal to 500, and at the same moment you can set up some acceptance criteria, like if your system is meeting the load of 1,000 concurrent users, then your system is acceptable, and for the normal load, if my system is meeting the requirement of 500 concurrent users and system behaves perfectly fine, then this will be accepted. So this is a way you can set up your different measurement unit for NFR. So you can do it for usability. You can same thing you can do for security and other non-functional requirements. The next major thing is to arrange the NFR. So now we know that how you can identify your non-functional requirements, and then how you can decompose them further into different goals, and then how you can set up their measurement unit. And once you are ready with this, now the time is to arrange them, because now you're ready for the actual implementation. So most of you have already seen the traceability matrix. So this is very similar to traceability matrix, where you can map your in traceability matrix you map your requirements with each artifact. Now here what we are trying to do is we are mapping our non-functional requirement with each functionality or sub-functionality. So in the first column we have defined the role, like what kind of user will perform a functionality, and then what would be the sub-functionality, and for that sub-functionality what would be the NFR. So let's take an example of first row. So again the example is related with the e-commerce website. So here the consumer is performing or adding a product to the cart with login and without login. So for these two sub-functionalities, we have identified non-functional requirement as performance and usability. And for a consumer who is adding product to the cart with login, the performance, compatibility, security, usability, compatibility can be the non-functional requirements. For the e-commerce website admin, add product to the catalog, the performance could be the one non-functional requirement, security, usability, performance. So this is how you can create a traceable Excel-based table where you can map your different non-functional requirements with your functionality and sub-functionality. This arrangement can be further used as a checklist. So as soon as you are ready with some of, or you're done with some of the non-functional requirement implementation, you can place a check against each role, like this is implemented, or this can be implemented later, or performing a different task. So same kind of this arrangement can be used for the checklist as well. So during the requirement elicitation, addressing the right set of question is one of the challenging tasks. So even for this webinar, we have come across a question from one of our attendees, like what are the right set of questions one should ask during the requirement elicitation. So here we have tried to cover few of the non-functional requirement, performance, security, accessibility, usability, etc. So let's first understand what is performance. So by implementing non-functional for performance non-functional requirement, what we will achieve? Performance requirement concern the speed of operation of a system. Majorly performance testing deal with response time, throughput, resource utilization, workload. So in case all these goals are not met, what will be the impact on the system? So user may lose the transaction, user may lose the interest, and that may lead to high response time. So to achieve this non-functional requirement, the right set of question would be the performance test scope, what all things comes under performance test scope, any subsystem, any external system, any interface, any component which my system needs to interact with. So if you have information about all the system, then it will be easy for you to choose all those things, or you can set all these things under your test performance test scope. The next question would be the number of concurrent users in normal or peak hours, because most of the time have some certain time where they reach to a particular peak load. What is the hardware specification? What would be the baseline result, if any, if available? Because sometimes you have system already in place and you have some baseline results, and you try to cover. You are just performing some optimization over the new system or in the existing system. So baseline result would be helpful there. And what are the new performance goals if you are building a new system, or performance is already optimized for the existing system. So this type of questionnaire will help you to fetch out the information, like in which particular area you need to work on. So our next thing is security. Security is another one of the crucial non-functional requirement for the success of any project. So in security, security requirement is one of the essential and sensitive components of requirement engineering. And by implementing this security requirement, you can handle major things like confidentiality, integrity, authentication, authorization, availability, and non-repudiation. What would be the impact if the security is not met? The user could lose their financial data, the confidential information, and or the information packet can be lost in between the network when we are in between the two networks also. So right set of question would be the access management, if there are any role-based authorization is required or not, if my system is integrated with some other external system. So what would be the communication medium between those, whether there are any processes available where the encryption policy is implemented or not, what would be my password policy. So this kind of question can be asked, whether my system has audit capability, capturing user activities. So if someone is using your system for stealing some data, so that kind of logs will be captured. Any data export capability, data encryption, if SSL implementation requirement or required or not, and data privacy and data encryption when you're giving or sending or receiving data between two systems, is there any encryption is available or not? So this kind of this set of questions will be helpful for you to find out the right information. The next thing is usability. Usability is a quality attribute that assesses how easy user interfaces are to use, and these components are related with learnability, efficiency, memorability, error satisfaction. So by implementing this non-functional requirement, we can achieve these goals. And the impact is if my website is not very usable, user may lose the interest and maybe we lost the business. And the right set of questions, or you can create a checklist for you, are all the transactions able to complete within the 3 steps. The critical path is clear with no distraction or route. User instruction help note are clearly mentioned whether application, whenever applicable, the site require minimal scrolling, clicking. User can complete common tasks quickly. Does application support responsive design? So this type of question will help you to achieve usability non-functional requirement. The next thing is compatibility. Compatibility ensures that your system is able to perform well on different set of platform and software. In terms of platform, API driver, web browser, mobile devices. So the impact are lots of interactive design. If my site is not compatible with one of the browsers, so maybe a community who is large number of group who is using that particular browser may not be able to access my site, and sometimes a particular functionality doesn't work on a different kind of platform or OS or browser combination or device combination. And in that case, right set of questions would be what all platforms are supported, what all web browsers are supported, what are the different resolution requirements, does application support responsive design, what all mobile platform devices are supported. So this could be very long, but these are the major questions which can be asked during the requirement elicitation for compatibility. The next thing is accessibility. Accessibility refers to the inclusive practice of removing barriers that prevent interaction with or access to software by people with minor or moderate disabilities. The accessibility addresses different areas like visual disability, motor mobility disability, auditory disability, cognitive or intellectual disability. So, the impact is lots of users with a disability. So there, especially in North America, there are very large group of large number of people who are visually impaired or they are moderate disabled. They will not be able to access your website or application if the accessibility requirement is not captured well. So end of the user or your business will be impacted in that case. So that is one of the critical non-functional requirements. Most of the websites these days cover this type of accessibility requirements. And the right set of questions would be all accessibility standards covered based on priority 1, 2, and 3, or all type of target audience covered, or all WCAG standard finalized or not. So these kind of questionnaire can be asked if you are implementing accessibility. So we have taken few of the non-functional requirement and their the right set of questions for them. So based on these few examples, you can create a long list of questionnaires for different non-functional requirements, and you can prepare your checklist based on those questions, and that will also help you during the verification of non-functional requirements. So then let's try to understand how we can verify our non-functional requirements. So verification of non-functional requirements are as important as correct implementation, and verification can be done by identifying or executing non-functional requirement specific test scenarios. So when your development team or your testing team member prepare the test cases for the functional requirement, at the same moment they can prepare the test cases for the non-functional requirement as well. Verify NFR acceptance criteria for each NFR. So in the few previous slides, we had understanding like how you can set up different acceptance criteria for your different non-functional requirements. So you can use those acceptance criteria for the verification. You can perform verification in different environments. Different type of user groups can be involved if you talk about usability and accessibility. So we can add those groups members who will represent a large community or large group can be helpful for us to give us a very initial feedback. And the last one is share or measure learning for continuous improvement. So non-functional requirement implementation is ongoing process. So you can learn during the implementation. You can use those learnings during your next implementation for the continuous improvement. So friends, we are done with the presentation part. So now it's time for question and answer. So please feel free to ask any question related to non-functional requirement and their implementation.
Thank you, Deepak. Thanks for this insightful presentation. Let's quickly take up the questions now. I would request you to read out the questions and their answers, so all our users may listen to the commendable insights.
So someone asked a question, who should take decision about NFR, developer or customer? So this question is asked by John Paul. This is very subjective thing because as at the beginning of presentation we have mentioned that this is the parallel process of implementing functional requirement and non-functional requirement. So when you are gathering requirement at the same moment, when you are collecting requirement for functional things, at the same moment you try to collect information about non-functional things. So this could be a joint effort, and if you feel that your customer is not very well aware or they are not technical capable of finding out the non-functional requirement, then it should be a project team or project manager or business analyst task to let them aware about what all type of non-functional requirement can be implemented on the project. So it could be anyone, your customer or your developer or your project team member or your any stakeholder can take a decision on this. And finally, the whole team can jointly decide what all feature needs to be implemented. Someone asked, could you please explain what is PCI compliance in terms of security? PCI is payment card industries. These are the standard. These are the legal standard which needs to be implemented when some e-commerce website use the transaction through credit card, net banking, debit card. So there are certain rule or certain guidelines from legal perspective which needs to be implemented. So these are the PCI compliance which you need to take care of when you have financial transaction using any type of card. Someone asked for mobile application, do we have any special NFR to be focused for different OS apart from performance and cross operation? Yes, for mobile we can identify different type of non-functional requirements. First one is the compatibility, because when you are using your mobile or maybe it's a native application, hybrid or web-based mobile application. So if you are particularly working on native application, then there could be a chance like these people are using Android or maybe iPhone, and that native application will work on that particular area only, that particular OS only. And the another thing is the user gestures you can cover on, like if you have iPhone, then what kind of user gestures will be covered, and if you are working on Android. So this could be your another non-functional requirement. And apart from this, security, usability, responsive design, all these will come under non-functional requirements. Someone asked what will be the impact on a project in case of bad elicitation of non-functional requirement in terms of delivery as well as efficiency. So I believe I have covered this topic during the presentation, and if you are not going for the right set of questions, if you are not collecting the right set of requirement for non-functional things, then your project is in risk mode, because you cannot deliver your project for the functionality only, because there are a lot of other aspects which are associated for the success of your project. So requirement elicitation for non-functional requirement is one of the crucial parts where you need to focus on, and that's the main reason of most of the time. This is the main reason of project failure. So this needs to be taken care very carefully. Someone asked any technique defined for NFR. So we have shown you some of the example, like how you can fetch out your non-functional requirement from your functional requirement. So decomposition is one of the methods. When you have a list of particular requirements, you can break them further into the task, and for each task you identify the non-functional requirement, and for each non-functional requirement you set up specific goals. For a single NFR, there could be multiple goals which you need to achieve. So by this way, you can identify and implement non-functional requirements. Someone asked, when should we identify non-functional requirement in a project? So identification of non-functional requirement should be done at the very beginning, when you are performing the requirement gathering for your project, which is the requirement elicitation process. And this start happens as soon as you are done with the project initiation thing. Once you are done with the legal agreement, then as soon as you are done with this thing, you start gathering the requirement for your project. And at that time, your business analyst or BA team visit your customer, or maybe they can conduct some telephonic conversation to collect the requirement. So at that time, NFR should be finalized, and that should be a part of your project execution plan. Someone asked how we handle situation when the customer does not have any non-functional requirement on performance. We have also covered this thing. Sometimes it happens your customer is not aware of your non-functional requirement for the system they are going to implement, and in that case, the project development team is responsible to give them the detail about the non-functional requirement, what type of performance criteria should be there, what would be the performance goals, and this thing needs to be done jointly with the customer. And if your customer is ready to go for the performance testing, then you can baseline their results before you are developing a new system, so that you can compare your baseline thing with the newly implemented application. Someone asked, can functional and non-functional requirement gathering happen simultaneously? Yes, this is a parallel process. When you do elicitation for function requirement. At the same moment, you can set up or create a right set of questions for non-function requirement as well, and this will be a right approach to handle the non-function requirement, because you cannot implement all the function requirement at one point and then after that you start implementing the non-function requirement. This is a parallel process. Someone asked if the time is not sufficient for NFR testing, how to do NFR testing. To answer this question, the non-function requirement is as important as the function requirement. So if you are short with the time, then you can cover the major points of those non-function requirements in terms of usability. Like you can check whether the site is intuitive or not, rather than completing all the checklist points. And you can by the alignment with your customer that you are covering these major things, but the remaining things will be covered maybe in the next phase or maybe a phase 2 or later on, so that you can have a mutual agreement with your customer, like you're left with few things and this will be done later. But this is as important as your functional requirements. Someone asked, are testers involved in non-functional requirements? Like, will they have to write any test cases? Yes, this is absolutely true. Tester should be involved for non-functional requirement testing, and they should write test cases for the non-functional requirement. For example, performance testing, security testing, and usability testing, compatibility testing. So all can be captured using test cases. Someone asked, are we having any automation tool to automate non-functional requirement testing other than performance tool? For some of the non-function requirement, you have tool, for example, security testing, you have tool for test the different security aspects. But some of the non-functional requirement doesn't have tool like maintainability. So there is no tool for maintainability or supportability or interoperability. So these are basically approach which you need to implement it during when you are designing your architecture. So these things should be applied at that time. Someone asked, can developer propose non-functional requirements from their experience basis? Yes, this is absolutely true. That's the thing where you need to use your experience, because if you are experienced well, then most of the time you will uncover that if this type of non-functional requirement is not captured, then this is going to happen. So this kind of example or this kind of things you can share with your stakeholders, and based on that you can suggest as many as non-functional requirements with your project team. Will NFR will be same for mobile app or website? Yes, in most of the case they will be same, but might be the execution method will be different, because if you're performing performance testing for your web application and you're doing the same thing for your mobile application, the method would be different, but the nature of functional requirement would remain the same. And there might be a slight changes. During I answered the previous question, I have said that in the mobile testing, if you are working on a native application, then user gestures will be one of the non-functional requirements which you can add for the mobile testing, but this will not be applicable for your website. So there could be a little difference, but most of the time they will be same. Someone asked how to test non-functional requirement and how to assure the 100% accuracy. How to handle non-functional requirement when the requirements are given for functional requirement only. So to answer this question, as I have said previously, that requirement elicitation would help you in that case. So if you write right set of questions related to non-functional requirements along with the functional requirement, you will come to know that what type of non-functional requirement you are going to implement. And apart from those, you can test the coverage of, like, if you have identified security as a non-functional requirement, then you can write the number of test cases for those security requirements. And if all the test cases are passed, based on the past results, you can say whether your non-functional requirements are completely covered or not. What are the average percentage of requirement in case of functional requirement and non-functional requirement in normal application, or will that be depend on client's actual requirement? There is no thumb rule of percentage defining the number of percentage. It depends on your requirement, and sometimes, as I have explained it using an example, when you break your requirement into sub-requirement and task, and then based on those tasks you can identify your non-functional requirement. So this is how you actually find out that what type of non-functional requirement needs to be implemented. So you can again have some alignment with your customer, like what all in non-functional requirement they are going to implement in this project or not. One question is, can a tester reject the build on the basis of NFR? Yes, testers have the right. If they feel that non-functional requirements are not captured well, then this build can be rejected. Is there any more question? Someone want to ask any other question? So thank you guys. Thank you for participating in this webinar. I hope I have covered all the topic in well mannered. Thanks for your participation.
Thank you, Deepak. I'm really thankful to you for conducting this webinar today. It was indeed a great session. I would also like to thank all our participants for their support in making this webinar a huge success. The recording of this webinar will be available on techgig.com very soon. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for your time.